Su Wanqing had served the manor for 5 years, keeping her head down and attending to the marquis with unwavering diligence. Now that the old madam wished to elevate her to the position of concubine, it seemed only proper. Thank you for watching this video. I stood in the center of the main hall, hands hanging at my sides, my moon-white servant's dress washed so many times it had faded to near transparency. From the corner of my eye, I could see the bowed heads of the assembled servants, though they couldn't quite hide the furtive glances darting from beneath their lashes. All eyes fixed on Shen Mian seated in the place of honor. My marquis held a celadon teacup in his hand. He glanced up at me as one might regard an insignificant trinket, then spoke with studied indifference, though his words fell like hammer blows upon the golden brick floor. Mother does her too much credit. A mere chambermaid without even proper status. How could she possibly deserve to enter the family properly? He paused, his gaze drifting towards the courtyard beyond. As though recalling something amusing, a cold smile twisted his lips. Zhang Qi, the groom in our stables, remains unmarried. Give her to him as a wife. At least she'll serve some purpose and find her proper place. The collective gasp that followed was almost deafening. Even the old madam started so violently that a bead from her prayer bracelet dropped and rolled to my feet. Steward Chow, standing beside the old madam, had served the Shen family for decades. His brow furrowed so deeply one could have crushed a mosquito between the creases. He made to speak, but a single cutting glance from Shen Mian silenced him. The servants' stares grew bolder now, some pitying, some contemptuous, others simply relishing the spectacle. I didn't so much as lift my eyelids. 5 years from the age of 15, I'd served as his chambermaid, witnessing the full measure of his callousness, tasting every flavor of coldness this manor had to offer. This humiliation was merely the final straw, and the opportunity I'd been waiting 5 years to seize. I dropped to my knees, pressing my forehead against the icy floor tiles. My voice emerged calm and level, devoid of resentment or grievance, containing only deference. This servant thanks the Marquis for his gracious gift. I accept your command. My ready compliance seemed to deepen the contempt in Shen Mian's eyes. He raised an eyebrow, apparently surprised I'd offered no plea for mercy, not even a token protest. He snorted dismissively and waved his hand. Get out. Don't soil the floor of my hall. I rose, hands still at my sides, turned and walked from the main hall. I looked at no one, didn't glance back, simply passed through the covered walkway and returned to the cramped side room I'd called home. The side room sat tucked in a corner of the western courtyard. A tiny space containing a bed and a table. This had been my dwelling for 5 years in the manor, and now I felt no nostalgia as I prepared to leave it behind. I opened the wooden cabinet. Inside lay only a few changes of clothing and a small brocade box. The box contained my savings from 5 years of scrimping coins I'd hoarded from my meager allowance, supplemented by occasional rewards from the old madam. Not much, but enough to sustain me for a while. I folded my clothes, wrapped them in a coarse cloth bundle, tucked the brocade box inside my robe, shouldered the bundle, and left. As I passed through the moon gate of the western courtyard, I encountered Shen Mian leaning against the covered walkway, his personal servant at his side. Seeing me heading towards the stables with my bundle, his lips curled into a disdainful smile. Clearly he thought I was meekly accepting my fate without even a token struggle. He spat in my direction. At least you know your place. I ignored him, my steps never faltering. Beneath my placid exterior, calculations churned like storm waters. Shen Mian, you've humiliated me today, gifting me to a groom like chattel. Mark my words. I'll make you and your precious Jin and manor pay in blood. I'll see you disgraced, your reputation in tatters, condemned beyond redemption. The stables occupied the far northwestern corner of the manor, adjacent to the outer courtyard. Few ventured there save the grooms. The place was even more dilapidated than my side room, with several abandoned outbuildings serving as quarters for the stable hands. Having been given to Zhang Qi, I would naturally reside here. As I approached the stable entrance, the pungent reek of horse manure assaulted my nostrils. Several young grooms squatted by the wall, smoking their pipes. Seeing me approach, they sauntered over with leering grins. Well, if it isn't the Marquis's chambermaid, what brings you to our humble establishment? Heard she has been given to Zhang Qi. Poor sod. How is a rough fellow like him supposed to handle the Marquis's cast-offs? Their crude remarks came thick and fast. I clutched my bundle tighter but said nothing, merely fixing them with a cold stare. At that moment, a tall man emerged from the stables, around 30 years old, with sun-darkened skin and calloused hands, yet his eyes were remarkably clear. Seeing the young grooms surrounding me, he barked sharply. "Clear off, all of you. Get back to work." The grooms slunk away, properly chastened. The man approached and bowed respectfully. "I am Zhongqi. Pleased to meet you, miss." He didn't call me a lowly servant or regard me with contempt like the others. Instead, he addressed me as Miss. This surprised me slightly, though I merely nodded. "I'll be troubling you from now on, Brother Zhang." Zhongqi seemed taken aback by my courtesy. He scratched his head and gestured towards a nearby outbuilding. "Miss, that room's empty. I've given it a basic clean. You can stay there. If anyone gives you trouble, just let me know." I followed his gesture. The outbuilding's roof showed signs of leaking. Several window papers were torn, and the door was ancient, groaning on its hinges. Still, it exceeded my expectations considerably. I thanked Zhongqi and entered the outbuilding, placing my bundle on the kang. The brick bed was cold. Cobwebs festooned the corners. I swept the edge of the kang and sat down, feeling no self-pity, only cold, calculating focus. The stables lay on the route between the outer and inner courtyards. Shen Mian would have to pass this way whenever he went out, and the manor's residents would traverse this path regularly. This was the perfect vantage point for observation. In the days that followed, I settled into life at the stables. Zhongqi remained consistently respectful, never overstepping boundaries, bringing me food each day. Though nothing fancy, it was always hot, and he shielded me from servants who came to harass me. The other servants, seeing me reduced to a groomswoman, regarded me as a phoenix fallen from grace, worthless now. They made me sweep manure, feed horses, and scrub troughs, tossing me table scraps, sometimes even spoiled food. I endured it all. Whatever they demanded, I did. I swept the manure until it gleamed, fed the horses punctually and precisely, scrubbed the troughs until they sparkled. I wore a perpetual mask of compliance, convincing everyone I'd truly accepted my fate, that I'd been thoroughly broken. Only when alone did I shed that submissive faha. A dayed under the guise of stable duties. I moved between the stables and outer courtyard pathways, monitoring Shen Mian's movements and observing the manor's comings and goings. Shen Mian kept a regular schedule, departing for the front courtyard each morning at the hour of the dragon to handle official business, returning around the hour of the monkey. Occasionally, he'd venture out late at night, his destinations mysterious. I noticed that whenever he left after dark, he'd go alone to the area behind the manor's artificial mountain. Few people went there. It was a blind spot in the manor's layout. One night, using the excuse of feeding the horses, I crept quietly to the rear of the artificial mountain. Sure enough, I spotted Shen Mian standing in the stone pavilion, facing a man dressed in black. The man wore a veiled hat that obscured his face. They conversed in hushed tones, their voices barely audible. I was too far away to make out specifics. I could only watch as Shen Mian withdrew a slip of paper from his sleeve and handed it to the black-clad man. The paper bore a wax seal stamped with what appeared to be a lotus flower. The man in black tucked the paper into his sleeve, bowed, then swiftly departed through the manor's side gate. Shen Mian lingered in the pavilion a moment longer before turning to leave. As he did, he glanced around warily, clearly concerned about being observed. I quickly ducked into the nearby shrubbery, not daring to emerge until he'd gone. My mind churned with questions. Who was that man in black? What was the significance of the lotus seal? Shen Mian's clandestine midnight meetings surely concealed some unspeakable secret. Beyond Shen Mian's suspicious activities, I also noticed peculiar behavior from Accountant Zheng, the manor's bookkeeper. Accountant Zheng was a long-serving fixture of the manor, having worked under Shen Mian for years. He typically presented a genial, smiling demeanor. Yet recently, I'd observed him locking himself in the accounts office late at night, lamplight visible through the windows as he worked on the books, sometimes until nearly dawn. Moreover, he'd become furtive when entering or leaving the office, as though terrified of being seen. The accounts office was the manor's nerve center, Accountant Zhang's abnormal behavior surely indicated something rotten in the books. I filed away both leads in my memory. They became the first glimmers of light illuminating my path to vengeance. I knew that following these threads would eventually expose Shen Muyan's vulnerabilities. Days passed. I maintained my facsimile, a deed of docile compliance while secretly seeking opportunities to investigate further. Zhang Qi remained respectful, even volunteering information about manor affairs. He mentioned that Shen Mian had been frequenting the imperial stables outside the city, and that accountant Zhang had been making regular trips to the money house. I committed every detail to memory. Finally, opportunity knocked. Shen Muan owned a beloved imperial horse named Takshu, treading snow, a gift from the emperor himself. The magnificent creature was pure white, and Shen Muan treasured it above all else. Only Zhang Qi was permitted to tend it. Others weren't allowed near. When Takshu fell ill, I volunteered to Zhang Qi, claiming some knowledge of equine care and asking to help nurse the horse back to health. Zhang Qi hesitated, but eventually yielded to my entreaties. I tended Takshu meticulously each day, feeding it premium fodder, bathing it, applying medicine. The horse recovered quickly and grew fond of me, nuzzling my hand whenever I approached. When Shen Mian came to check on Takshu and saw how well I'd cared for it, he merely frowned, saying nothing. He clearly assumed I was trying to curry favor and continued to regard me as beneath notice, which was precisely what I wanted. His contempt was my best camouflage. Through caring for Takshu, I gained access to Shen Muan's riding horses. I knew Zhang Qi took Takshu to the imperial stables outside the city every few days for grooming. The perfect opportunity to send a message. I had an old acquaintance named Lu Jingxing, a distant nephew of my late mother. Before she died, Mother had entrusted me to his care. He was a man of honor and considerable capability. He'd settled in the outskirts of the capital, where he ran an escort agency with a loyal crew. I knew that if I could reach him, he'd help me without question. I found a small piece of mulberry paper and used charcoal to write a few lines, asking if he could investigate the origins of the lotus wax seal and identify the black-clad man who'd left Jinan Manor through the side gate late at night. I folded the note into a tiny square and concealed it in Takshu's mane, where a particularly thick tuft of hair would hide it from casual observation, on the day Zhang Qi was to take the horse out. I personally led Takshu to him, reminding him to take care on the road. Zhang Qi nodded earnestly and led Takshu away from the manor. I stood at the stable entrance, watching his figure disappear around the corner, silently praying the note would reach Lu Jingxing safely. Having set the investigation of the black-clad man in motion, I turned my attention to Accountant Zhang. I knew extracting information from him directly would prove impossible. I'd need to be more creative. On an afternoon, Accountant Zhang emerged from the accounts office carrying a stack of ledgers, intending to present them to Shen Mian in the front courtyard. I timed my approach perfectly, carrying a basin of water for the horses, and accidentally collided with him at the corner. The basin overturned, water drenching him and soaking the ledgers in his arms. "Oh, Accountant Zhang, I am so sorry, I didn't mean to," I exclaimed, feigning panic as I crouched to retrieve the ledgers. Accountant Zhang, soaked through and staring at his dampened books, turned purple with rage. "You wretched girl, are you blind? These are ledgers for the Marquis's review. Can you afford to replace them?" As he berated me, he frantically gathered the ledgers, terrified the ink might run. He failed to notice that whilst collecting the books, my eyes rapidly scanned their contents. Those densely packed figures seemed to etch themselves into my brain. I saw records of the manor's estate harvests, officially listed as 5,000 dan, yet a marginal note indicated 8,000 dan. Clearly the harvest had been underreported. There were also records of salt permits. The court had granted the manor 30 permits, yet the ledger showed 50 permits unaccounted for. Salt permits were strictly controlled by the court. Embezzling them constituted a grave crime, to say nothing of falsifying estate yields and deceiving the court. Either offence, if exposed, would be sufficient to destroy Shen Muyan utterly. I continued apologizing whilst helping him dry the ledgers, my face a mask of distress whilst my heart turned to ice. "Shen Mian, your greed knows no bounds. These accounts are riddled with corruption." After thoroughly berating me, Accountant Zhang saw that the ledgers had only been slightly dampened, the writing still legible. He could only storm off, clutching his books indignantly. I watched his retreating back, a cold smile playing at my lips. This was only the beginning. I would drag every bit of corruption into the light. Just as I'd gathered preliminary evidence of the manor's embezzlement, the old madam grew suspicious. Seeing that I'd neither wept nor complained after being given to a groom indeed, that I'd been remarkably compliant, not uttering a single word of protest. She sensed something amiss. She dispatched her personal attendant, Nanny Chin, to the stable quarters to sound me out. Nanny Chin was a manor veteran, shrewd and sharp-tongued, who'd served the old madam for years and enjoyed her complete trust. When she arrived, I was shoveling manure, my clothes spattered with mud. Seeing her, I quickly set down my shovel and bowed. Nanny Chin entered the outbuilding, surveying the dilapidated surroundings with a frown. "Miss Wang Qing, now that you are living here, do you harbor resentment? Do you hate the Marquis?" I kept my hands at my sides, my voice tinged with timidity and numb resignation. "Nanny jests, I am merely a lowly chambermaid. That the Marquis has granted me any place at all is an enormous kindness. How could I dare resent him or hate him? To have this room, to have food to eat, I am already quite content." Nanny Chin stared into my eyes, as though trying to read my thoughts. My gaze remained placid, betraying nothing, only submission and numbness. After a long scrutiny that revealed nothing, she asked a few more questions about manor affairs. I answered each one flawlessly. Finally, Nanny Chin sighed, left a plate of pastries and departed. Watching her leave, I exhaled in relief. I'd successfully deceived her. The old madam's suspicions were temporarily allayed. Within days, Lu Jinxing sent word through an intermediary. He'd traced the lotus wax seal. It belonged to Boss Lu, Jiangnan's largest salt merchant. The black-clad man was Boss Lu's personal steward. Shen Mian had been secretly colluding with Boss Lu, embezzling salt permits and selling them to the merchant for enormous profit. Those 50 unaccounted permits had ended up in Boss Lu's hands. Lu Jingxing had also discovered that Shen Mian wasn't merely embezzling permits and falsifying harvest records. He'd been misappropriating manor funds to acquire considerable property in the capital, all registered under his mistress Liu Qinghuan's name. I knew of Liu Qinghua naturally. She was Shen Mian's kept woman residing in the western lanes of the capital. He doted on her extravagantly, building her a private villa and showering her with gold, silver, and jewels. Everyone in the manor knew, but none dared mention it, intimidated by Shen Mian's authority. Armed with this evidence, I knew the time had come to leave the manor. Remaining at Jinan Manor was increasingly dangerous. If Shen Mian ever realized something was amiss, I'd be dead before I could act. Only by leaving could I truly strike back. I began planning my departure. Zhang Qi was sent to deliver horses outside the city, a 3-day errand. This was the perfect opportunity. Without Zhang Qi present, the other servants grew even more brazen. I could exploit this. That morning, the woman who delivered food to the stables tossed me a bowl of spoiled congee and shoved me, snarling, "Ungrateful wretch, you should be grateful for anything you get. How dare you be choosy? On any other day, I would have endured it. But today, I deliberately acted as though I'd reached my breaking point, knocking the bowl from her hands. The bowl shattered on the ground. It was a coarse ceramic bowl Shen Mian had once given me. Nothing valuable, but it bore his mark. In the manor, anything bestowed by the Marquis carried symbolic weight. How dare you push me? How dare you feed me spoiled food? I may have been given to a groom, but I was given by the Marquis himself. You dare abuse me? I deliberately raised my voice, adding a tremor of tears, as though truly driven to desperation. The woman, seeing me dare to resist, froze momentarily before growing even more aggressive, raising her hand to strike me. You've got some nerve. A lowly servant talking back. I'll teach you a lesson on the Marquis's behalf. Before her hand could land, Steward Chow arrived, drawn by the commotion. Stop this instant, Steward Chow approached, frowning at the broken bowl and my reddened eyes. What is going on here? The woman struck first, claiming I was ungrateful, had broken the Marquis's bowl and dared to talk back. He knelt on the ground, weeping piteously, explaining that I'd been abused daily at the stables, fed spoiled food, given the hardest labor, and now even the Marquis's bowl had been destroyed. I simply couldn't go on. Steward Chow. I've served this manor faithfully for 5 years, never once erring. I accept my current fate. But I am still human, born of parents. I cannot endure such humiliation. I only ask to leave the manor and fend for myself. Please, Steward Chow, grant me this mercy. I kowtowed as I wept, my forehead quickly reddening against the ground. Steward Chow looked troubled. He knew I'd been mistreated at the stables but hadn't dared intervene given Shen Muyan's orders. Now that I was demanding to leave, he didn't dare decide unilaterally and made to summon someone to inform Shen Muyan. But I'd already packed a simple bundle and slung it over my shoulder. I pushed past Steward Chow and strode towards the manor's main gate. Wan Xing, stop. The Marquis hasn't given permission. You cannot leave, Steward Chow called after me. I didn't look back. My pace quickened as I crossed the outer courtyard and reached the manor gates. The guards saw me approaching with my bundle and moved to block me, but my cold stare made them hesitate. They knew I'd been given to a groom and was now leaving in distress. They didn't dare offend me lightly. I walked straight through Jinan Manor's gates, step by step along the capital's cobblestone streets, never once looking back. Only when the manor's vermilion gates had vanished from view did I stop and wipe the tears from my face. The vulnerability and distress vanished instantly, replaced by icy resolve. When Shen Muyan learned I'd left, he'd surely assume I'd fled in humiliation. Driven to desperation, he'd never imagine I hadn't been driven anywhere. This had been meticulously planned. Nor would he realize that when I left I'd taken not only Liu Jingxing's copied evidence of the manor's embezzlement, but also a jade pendant bearing an official seal that I'd found outside his study whilst tending taxi. The seal carved into the jade was a forgery identical to the court's Salt and Iron Bureau seal. It was irrefutable proof of his collusion with salt merchants and embezzlement of permits. With this pendant, he couldn't deny anything, even if he tried. I didn't go to the outskirts to find Liu Jingxing. Instead, I headed straight for the Western Market in the capital. The Western Market was one of the capital's most prosperous areas, a place where all sorts mingled, but also where one could most easily establish oneself. I rented a small shopfront in a Western Market alley, using my 5 years of savings to secure the lease. I purchased simple furnishings and opened a cosmetics shop, which I named Ningxiang, Tranquil Fragrance. My mother had been a renowned cosmetics artisan in Jiangnan before her death, leaving behind unique formulations. Those recipes were treasures I'd kept close to my heart, and now they finally had their use. I crafted rouge according to mother's formulation. My rouge used premium ingredients, produced vibrant colors, and carried a delicate floral fragrance, unlike other capital cosmetics shops, whose products were either dull in color or overwhelmingly perfumed. Before long, Ningxiang shop's rouge became famous throughout the Western Market. Young ladies and married women flocked to buy it, and business flourished day by day. I hired 2 shop assistants, one to mind the store, another to run errands. Life gradually improved, and I finally had my own foothold in the capital. I knew Shen Mian would eventually learn I'd opened a cosmetics shop, but I hadn't expected the first to cause trouble wouldn't be him, but his mistress, Liu Qinghuan. When Liu Qinghuan discovered I'd not only left the manor without falling into destitution but had opened a thriving cosmetics shop in the Western Market, she was consumed with resentment. She fancied herself Shen Mian's beloved, whilst I was merely a discarded chambermaid he'd given to a groom. I had no right to fare better than her. One afternoon, Liu Qinghuan arrived at Ningxiang's shop with her personal maid Yunxi and several burly women, making quite the entrance. The moment they entered, they smashed the shop's cosmetics and powders to pieces. Porcelain bottles shattered across the floor, rouge scattered everywhere. She wore an elaborate pink silk dress, her hair adorned with gold hairpins inlaid with rubies, her face heavily made up. She regarded me with contempt as one might look at an insect. Su Wangqing, how dare you open a cosmetics shop, a lowly servant given to a groom, showing your face in public in the Western Market. Have you no shame? Yunxi chimed in. My mistress is the Marquis's beloved, a worthless creature like you dares compare yourself to her. Close this shop immediately and get out of the Western Market. Otherwise, we'll demolish your shop and break your legs. The customers in the shop, sensing trouble, fled. My 2 assistants tried to intervene but were shoved aside by the burly women and sent sprawling. Seeing no one dared stop her, Liu Qinghuan grew even more brazen. She summoned several local thugs, led by Wang Meng, the Western Market's chief ruffian. She pointed at me and told Wang Meng, "Brother Wang, help me smash this shop and drive this wretch out. I'll reward you handsomely afterwards." Wang Meng rubbed his hands together, leering at me lecherously. "If Miss Liu commands it, I am happy to oblige." He and his thugs moved to act. My assistants turned pale with fear, but I remained where I stood, expression calm, showing no panic whatsoever. I'd anticipated Liu Qinghuan would cause trouble and had prepared accordingly. I caught one assistant's eye and gave a subtle signal. He immediately understood, turned, and slipped out the back door to fetch Liu Jingxing. Seeing me motionless, Liu Qinghuan assumed I was paralyzed with fear and laughed coldly. "What is wrong?" frightened. "If you beg me now, it might not be too late." I looked up at her, a mocking smile playing at my lips. Miss Liu using the Marquise's influence to cause trouble in the Western Market, smashing shops and hurling abuse. Do you think the capital's laws mean nothing? Laws? Liu Qinghuan acted as though she'd heard the funniest joke. In this capital, the Marquise's word is law. Today, I'll not only smash your shop, I'll ruin your reputation completely. Let's see if you dare flaunt yourself before me again. She gestured for Wang Meng to proceed. Wang Meng had just raised his cudgel when shouts rang out from outside. "Halt! Nobody move." Liu Jingxing had arrived with Constable Chen from the capital magistrate's office along with several officers. Constable Chen entered the shop, surveying the wreckage with a frown. "What is going on here? Who is causing this disturbance?" Liu Qinghuan's expression shifted when she saw the officers, but she maintained her composure. "Constable Chen, I am from the Marquis of Jinan's household. This wretch has been swindling customers with her shop. I merely came to seek justice." I stepped forward, presenting the smashed cosmetics and account books to Constable Chen. "Constable Chen, Miss Liu arrived without provocation and had her people smash my shop, then set thugs on us. The customers who were here can all testify this isn't seeking justice. This is blatant public disturbance." Several customers who'd fled earlier returned and corroborated my account, explaining that Liu Qinghuan had started smashing things and hurling abuse without any discussion. Constable Chen looked from Liu Qinghuan to the devastation, then spoke sternly. "Miss Liu causing a public disturbance in broad daylight, destroying property. The evidence is clear. You'll need to come with me to the magistrate's office." Liu Qinghuan hadn't expected me to actually summon the authorities. Panicking, she tried to flee but was blocked by the officers. Yunxi attempted to shield her but was immediately restrained. Seeing the situation turning against her, Liu Qinghuan resorted to threats. "Su Wanqing, you just wait. I won't let this go, and neither will the Marquise." I watched her being led away by the officers, responding coldly. "I'll be waiting." After Liu Qinghuan was taken to the magistrate's office, Shen Mian soon had her released. I knew he'd be furious and would certainly retaliate. I had to prepare thoroughly. Sure enough, within days, Shen Mian's revenge came. He ordered all cloth merchants and cosmetics suppliers in the capital to cease doing business with me, cutting off my supply chain. He also had tax officials harass me, claiming my cosmetics shop was evading taxes and demanding exorbitant levies, trying to force me to close Ningxiang shop. Suddenly, my cosmetics shop faced dire straits. Without supplies, I couldn't produce rouge, and the crushing tax burden made operations impossible. Shen Mian thought this would drive me to ruin, unaware I'd prepared for precisely this scenario. I knew Shen Mian wasn't the sole power in the Shen family. His cousin Shen Jingren harbored a long-standing grudge against him. Shen Jingren was Shen Mian's cousin from a branch family, a capable man who'd always resented Shen Mian for monopolizing the family's assets. He'd been forced to swallow his anger because Shen Mian held the title of Marquis and wielded considerable power. I knew Shen Jingren could be a valuable ally, and the evidence of the manor's embezzlement I possessed was the perfect bargaining chip. I had Liu Jingxing discover Shen Jingren's residence and paid him a personal visit. Shen Jingren's estate was modest but tastefully appointed. When he saw me, he was both surprised and wary. Miss Su, you are the Marquise's person. What brings you here? I didn't mince words, placing partial evidence of the manor's embezzlement before him. Master Shen, I know you and the Marquis have long been at odds. The Marquis monopolized the Shen family assets, and you've never accepted it. I now possess evidence of the Marquis embezzling salt permits and falsifying estate yields. If we join forces to bring him down, the family assets will naturally return to their rightful place. Shen Jingren examined the documents, his pupils contracting sharply. He studied the evidence carefully for some time before looking up at me, his eyes probing. What do you want? I want Shen Muan utterly disgraced to make him pay for his past humiliations. My voice was calm but carried unshakable determination. If you help me weather this current crisis, resolve the supply and tax issues, I'll give you all the evidence to help you bring down Shen Muan. Shen Jingren fell silent for a long while before finally nodding. Very well, I'll cooperate with you. Shen Jingren had considerable connections in the capital, particularly in commercial circles and the tax bureau. He quickly resolved my supply problems, connecting me with cosmetics suppliers in Jiangnan who provided direct shipments at better prices than capital merchants. He also arranged for cloth merchants to supply me, allowing me to sell sachets, handkerchiefs and similar items, diversifying the shop's revenue. As for the tax issue, Shen Jingren went directly to Zheng Limu at the tax bureau, presenting evidence of tax evasion by shops registered under Shen Mian's name. Zheng Limu didn't dare delay. He immediately ordered a thorough investigation of all establishments under Shen Muan's ownership. Not only did he cease harassing Ningxiang shop, he assessed taxes at the standard rate and even granted me preferential treatment, noting that my shop's success had stimulated the Western market's economy. Shen Muan's suppression campaign had completely failed. When he learned I'd allied with Shen Jingren, he flew into a rage but could do nothing. Shen Jingren now held leverage, and Shen Mian didn't dare openly break with him, fearing his cousin would expose his secrets. One crisis had barely passed when another emerged. Just as Shen Mian was overwhelmed dealing with the combined pressure from Shen Jingren and myself, chaos erupted within Jing'an Manor itself. The old madam learned that Shen Mian had not only suppressed me but had also antagonized the branch family Shen Jingren, throwing the manor into complete disarray. When she heard rumors of his embezzling salt permits and falsifying estate records, the accumulated stress made her gravely ill. She took to her bed, unable even to rise. Imperial physician Li examined her and pronounced that the old madam was suffering from acute distress compounded by her advanced years and frail constitution. If her anguish continued, her prognosis was dire. With the old madam bedridden, the manor lost its anchor. Without a matriarch managing affairs, the inner household descended into chaos. Servants shirked their duties or schemed for advantage. The atmosphere grew thoroughly toxic. Seeing the old madam incapacitated, Liu Qinghuan sensed opportunity. She thought her moment had come to seize control of the household. Trading on Shen Muan's favor, she began issuing orders throughout the manor and bribed cook Zhang, plotting to tamper with the old madam's medicinal broth, intending to ensure the old woman never recovered. Fortunately, the head housekeeper, Nanny Chen, discovered the scheme and intervened in time, preventing catastrophe. But Liu Qinghuan was of humble origins, merely a kept woman. The manor's senior servants refused to acknowledge her authority. Her commands went unheeded, and household affairs spiraled into complete pandemonium. Shen Muyan found himself overwhelmed, juggling investigations from the Court of Judicial Review, managing manor affairs, and attending to his gravely ill mother. He was stretched impossibly thin. The old madam lay in her sick, watching the manor collapse into disorder, whilst contemplating how her own son, whom she'd raised, had become so rapacious and callous. Her condition deteriorated further. She knew that only I could restore order to this shambles. I alone had spent 5 years in the manor, keeping my head down, proving my capability and discretion, able to command the servants' respect. So she dispatched Steward Chow personally to Ningxiang shop, asking me to return. When Steward Chow arrived, I was at the counter tallying accounts. Business remained brisk, customers coming and going in steady streams. He approached me, his expression mixing entreaty with awkwardness. Miss Su, the old madam, is gravely ill. The manor has no one in charge, and the Marquis acknowledges his mistakes. The old madam has sent me to ask you to return. If you agree, she'll establish you as an official concubine, and you'll have complete authority over household management." The nearby customers paused, curious about this drama unfolding before them. I set down my abacus and looked up at Steward Chow, my lips curving into an icy smile that drained the color from his face. "Steward Chow, please convey to the old madam that I am not worthy of being a concubine at Jinan Manor, nor fit to wield its household authority." My voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly to every ear. When the Marquis stood in that main hall and gave me to a groom, humiliating me so thoroughly, treating me like vermin, and now that the manor's in crisis, the old madam ill, and chaos reigns, suddenly they remember me and want me to come clean up their mess. Rather absurd, wouldn't you say? "Miss Sue, surely you are not still holding a grudge. The old madam genuinely wishes for your return." Steward Chow attempted to reason with me. "A grudge?" I cut him off. "I am not holding a grudge. I am revolted. The ground at Jinan Manor dirties my feet. Its status dirties my person. I am Su Wang Qing, now running a cosmetics shop in the Western Market, thriving and prosperous. Why would I return to that nauseating manor to endure the Marquis's and Liu Qinghuan's disdain?" I paused, watching Steward Chow's face flush with shame and anger, then continued, "Tell Shen Mian that I'll remember his generous gift of giving me to a groom for the rest of my life. Now that his manor's in ruins, it is no concern of mine. I won't return. Not one step." Steward Chow stood speechless, mortified, unable to formulate a response. Eventually, he could only slink away in defeat, watching his retreating figure. I knew I'd not only humiliated Shen Mian, but thoroughly destroyed Jinan Manor's dignity. When Steward Chow returned to the manor, he relayed my words verbatim to both the old madam and Shen Mian. The old madam, upon hearing my response, coughed up blood and collapsed, her condition worsening dramatically. Shen Mian flew into an even greater rage, smashing everything in his room to pieces, swearing he'd have me torn limb from limb, though it was merely impotent fury, as he had no energy to spare for revenge against me. I knew the final moment to bring down Shen Mian had arrived. Shen Jingren and I combined all our evidence into comprehensive dossiers, copies of the manor's salt permit embezzlement accounts, records of falsified estate yields, Shen Mian's forged official seal jade pendant, correspondence between him and salt merchant boss Liu, proof of misappropriated funds used to acquire private property in the capital. Everything meticulously documented. The evidence was ironclad. Through his connections at the censorate, Shen Jingren submitted these materials directly to Censor-in-Chief Zhang. Minister Zhang was renowned for his incorruptibility and unwavering rectitude. Upon reviewing the evidence, he erupted in fury and immediately petitioned the emperor. The emperor, examining the proof, was beside himself with rage. He'd never imagined that his personally appointed Marquis of Jinan would have such audacity, embezzling salt permits, falsifying estate records, colluding with merchants, deceiving the throne. This wasn't merely corruption, it was contempt for imperial authority itself. The emperor immediately issued an edict commanding Minister Zhou of the Court of Judicial Review to personally investigate Marquis Shen Mian, conducting a thorough inquiry and showing no leniency whatsoever. Officials from the Court of Judicial Review, bearing the emperor's decree, descended upon Jinan Manor in force. The manor's servants, seeing the officers arrive, scattered in terror like birds from a disturbed nest. The officials stormed directly into the main courtyard, seizing the accounts office and arresting everyone involved. Accountant Zhang was apprehended on the spot. Seeing the game was up, he confessed everything to save his own skin, detailing all of Shen Mian's crimes and implicating salt merchant boss Liu as well. Shen Mian was placed under house arrest in the manor's main courtyard, forbidden to leave. Watching the investigating officials, listening to Accountant Zhang's confession, surveying the devastation throughout the estate, he finally understood the depth of his predicament. He tried calling in favors to escape punishment, attempted to petition the emperor for mercy, only to discover he'd alienated everyone. No one would lift a finger to help him. Throughout the manor, panic reigned. The former glory had utterly vanished, leaving only ruin and desolation. After Shen Mian's confinement, the manor spiraled into even greater chaos. Liu Qinghuan, seeing the manor's collapse and Shen Mian unable to protect even himself, had no intention of remaining loyal. Her greed revealed itself fully in that moment. She secretly conspired with a manor servant named Xiao Wang, sneaking into the treasury under cover of darkness. They packed up all the gold, silver, jewels, antiques, and paintings, several cartloads full, intending to flee the capital under night's cover and live comfortably elsewhere. But she hadn't anticipated that I'd predicted her attempt to abscond with the wealth. I'd already stationed Lu Jingxing and his escort agency brothers at every city gate, waiting for her to walk into the trap. Liu Qinghuan and Xiao Wang drove their loaded carts out through the western gate, barely reaching the official road beyond the city when Lu Jingxing and his men intercepted them. Lu Jingxing's brothers were all skilled fighters. Liu Qinghuan and Xiao Wang stood no chance and were quickly subdued. Every item from the carts was recovered. I had them deliver Liu Qinghuan, Xiao Wang, and all the recovered property to the authorities. Liu Qinghuan was imprisoned for theft of manor property, awaiting severe legal punishment. Xiao Wang, for conspiring with a mistress and stealing from his master's household, received 100 strokes of the heavy bamboo and was exiled to the frontier. When Shen Muan learned that Liu Qinghuan had attempted to flee with his wealth and had been captured by the authorities, he suffered such a shock that he vomited blood and collapsed unconscious. When he regained consciousness, he discovered that the manor's servants, seeing his downfall, had scattered like monkeys from a toppled tree. They'd looted whatever they could carry and abandoned Jinan Manor. Even his most trusted personal servant had stolen his private funds and disappeared. The once grand Jinan Manor now housed only a handful of elderly retainers and Steward Chow, who remained solely to attend the old madam. Steward Chow, grateful for the old madam's past kindnesses, stayed faithfully by her side, caring for her devotedly. But he refused to involve himself in any of Shen Mian's affairs. No matter how Shen Mian pleaded or shouted, he remained unmoved. Shen Mian sat alone in the empty main courtyard, surrounded by wreckage, listening to the wind outside, finally tasting the bitter fruit of complete abandonment and utter helplessness. But all of it was his own doing. He had no one else to blame. The Court of Judicial Review's investigation quickly reached its conclusion. Shen Mian's corruption was verified beyond doubt, colluding with salt merchants, embezzling permits, falsifying estate yields, misappropriating funds, forging official seals, deceiving the throne. Multiple offences, all substantiated with irrefutable evidence. The emperor's fury intensified. He immediately issued an edict. Shen Mian was stripped of his Marquis of Jinan title, reduced to commoner status, and exiled 3,000 li to the harsh frontier outpost of Ninguta, forbidden from ever returning to the capital. All estates, businesses, and assets of Jinan Manor were to be confiscated and absorbed into the imperial treasury. On the day the edict reached the manor, the old madam lay in her sickbed, her life force nearly spent. Hearing the decree's contents, watching her son being led away in chains by officers, she finally drew her last breath and passed away in Jinan Manor's main courtyard. Aged 67, Shen Mian, seeing his mother's corpse, wept bitterly, consumed by regret. But it was far too late. His wails echoed miserably through the empty halls, yet they could never restore his mother's life, reclaim his title, or resurrect his former glory. When I learned of the old madam's death, I remembered that she'd treated me reasonably well in the past, though she hadn't protected me. She'd occasionally shown small kindnesses, given me bits of silver, offered fragments of warmth, so I returned to Jinan Manor under my former name to arrange her funeral. I procured a fine coffin, engaged eminent monks to chant sutras for her soul's journey, and conducted her funeral with all proper ceremony and dignity. Several old servants, moved by my honoring the past and managing the old madam's final arrangements with such respect, came seeking positions with me, willing to work in my service. Among them was head housekeeper Nanny Chen, shrewd and capable, an invaluable asset. I accepted these former retainers, assigning them positions in my shop. I appointed Nanny Chen as Ningxiang shop's chief manager, letting her handle business affairs. She performed admirably, saving me considerable effort. Shen Mian was led away in chains towards exile in Ninguta. Before departing, he had Commander Wang, leader of the escort detail, convey a message asking to see me one last time. He begged me, for the sake of our 5 years together, to help him, to let him remain in the capital, even as a common citizen, rather than face the brutal hardships of Ninguta. I looked at the message Commander Wang delivered, my lips curving into an icy smile. 5 years together. On the day he gave me to a groom, whatever connection we'd had was severed, cleanly, completely, leaving nothing behind. I had Commander Wang relay my response to Shen Mian. Once you gave me to a groom, now you are exiled to Ninguta. Both are simply cause and effect. The wheel of fate turning. Su Wanqing and Shen Mian share no remaining connection. If you wish to see me, you may gaze in my direction from Ninguta's frozen wasteland. I won't be meeting you. Upon receiving my answer, Shen Mian fell into complete despair. Sitting in the prison cart as it bore him away, he watched the capital's gates recede into the distance until they vanished from sight entirely, the light fading from his eyes bit by bit. For the remainder of his days, he would merely exist in Ninguta's brutal climate, dragging out his years in endless remorse and suffering. As for me, after settling the old madam's affairs and consolidating my resources, I expanded Ningxiang shop throughout the capital streets, opening 7 branch locations in total. Every shop thrived. My rouge became the preferred choice of the capital's refined young ladies and wealthy matrons. Even palace consorts sent servants to purchase from my establishments. Beyond cosmetics, I'd also ventured into fabric and T3 cloth shops and 2 tea houses. The fabric shops sold premium materials from Jiangnan, featuring novel patterns and superior quality. The tea houses offered renowned teas from across the realm. Richly aromatic and exquisitely flavored, all my businesses flourished. I'd become one of the capital's most prominent female merchants, my name known to all. Everyone addressed me respectfully as Madame Su. No one remembered I'd once been a chambermaid at Jinan Manor given by the Marquis to a groom. I'd left the Western market behind, purchasing a spacious estate in the capital's southern district. The residence was tastefully appointed and comfortable, the courtyard filled with my beloved crabapple trees. Each late spring, when the crabapples bloomed, the entire estate filled with fragrance. Nanny Chen and the other retainers who joined me all resided in the estate. Our days were peaceful and content. Lu Jingxing continued running his escort agency in the outskirts. We'd become the closest of friends, the most reliable of allies. He managed my external affairs, dealt with troublesome ruffians. Whilst I introduced business to his agency, we supported each other, trusted completely, becoming each other's firmest foundation. Occasionally, I'd stand beneath the crabapple trees in my courtyard, surrounded by their fragrance, gazing out at the capital's prosperity, remembering that late spring 5 years ago. The main hall at Jinan Manor, Shen Mian's contemptuous smile, his words giving me to a groom. Those memories felt like a nightmare, yet they'd also allowed me to rise from the ashes, transforming from a helpless chambermaid into a powerful, prosperous female merchant. I knew my life would never again be subject to anyone's whims, never again suffer anyone's humiliation. In the days ahead, I would tend my shops, maintain my estate, care for those around me, living brilliantly and magnificently. As for Shen Mian, that once lofty Marquis of Jinan, he would only languish in Ninguta's frozen wastes, drowning in endless regret, watching me become everything he could never hope to reach. This was my most complete revenge. If tales of resilience and poetic justice appeal to you, do like and subscribe. Share your favorite revenge narrative in the comments. We've more stories lined up after all. Good storytelling deserves an audience, and brilliant comebacks shouldn't go unwitnessed.